is CNN.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, former First Lady and the Queen of Camelot, has died in New York.
Her family and close friends were at her side during Jackie's last hours.
We'll remember Jackie's days as First Lady. Her former Chief of Staff, Letitia Baldridge, will be among the guests joining us this morning.
This is CNN Morning News. 2 hours of news, interviews, and viewer phone calls with Donna Kelley and Leon Harris.
Good morning. Nice to have you join us for our morning news this morning. Grace, elegance, dignity, courage. These are adjectives frequently applied to Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
She was a very private person in the public eye. Former First Lady who went on to build a career in her own right in publishing. Mrs. Onassis learned that she had a form of cancer some 4 months ago, and she returned home Wednesday after a brief hospital stay. Doctors told her they couldn't do anything more for her. Mrs. Onassis died last night at home, surrounded by family. She was 64. Joining us outside her apartment building this morning is CNN's Charles Feldman. Charles?
Good morning. As you pointed out, grace, elegance, words often and usually associated with the name Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. And even in death, elegance and grace seem to be following her. Apparently, in an effort to avoid any sort of public spectacle following her death, CNN has learned that there has been preparations of the body in Mrs. Onassis's Fifth Avenue apartment. That's the apartment building that I'm standing in front of right now, as opposed to what normally happens, which is the body is prepared in a funeral home. We are told that there will be a private wake inside the 15-room complex looking out over New York Central Park, and then a private funeral service for the former First Lady of the United States. Yesterday, before she died, there was a constant parade of friends and close family members, mainly members of the Kennedy clan, who came to pay their last respects, or turned out to be their last respects, to Mrs. Onassis. The likes of Senator Ted Kennedy and Sergeant and Eunice Shriver, and of course her two children, John Jr. and Carolyn Kennedy. So again, we are told that there is going to be a private wake inside the apartment house here on Fifth Avenue, followed by a private funeral service. Of course, some of these things may change as the day progresses and as the family may decide to do things a bit differently. But it appears at this hour that there was some very clear thinking that went into this, and perhaps in the last few hours before her death, this was discussed with her. We have no way of knowing that, but it seems to be a very well-planned final day or final tribute to the former First Lady. Charles Feldman, CNN, reporting live from New York.
Charles, thank you. We're coming up to 4 minutes after the hour. Her glamour and style epitomized the administration of her late husband, President John F. Kennedy. Though for decades she was a public figure, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis always craved privacy and shunned the limelight. CNN's Bruce Morton takes this look back now at Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
Once upon a time, she was an inquiring photographer, but you could always tell she didn't need the money. She married even more money and a lot of politics. Her mother-in-law, Rose Kennedy, introduced the new campaigner.
Jack's wife, who has been campaigning with him.
She didn't like campaigning. She told a reporter in 1960, "I think I'm more of a private person. I don't really like to call attention to anything." But she did campaign, of course, welcoming Massachusetts voters to the house she and the senator shared in Washington's Georgetown.
I look forward to meeting all of you this fall as soon as the summons is out.
In the 1960 presidential campaign, she pitched for votes in Spanish.
Well,
why not? A few years later, she charmed Charles de Gaulle in French. In the White House, in fact, she charmed us all. She wouldn't have said it to cellist Pablo Casals, but at one White House affair, asked if the president had a favorite song, she is supposed to have murmured, "Just keep playing Hail to the Chief," over and over. She was beautiful. He was handsome. We called it Camelot. And then, in an instant, it all changed. Blood on the pink suit. Lyndon Johnson took the oath of office aboard Air Force One.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The pretty First Lady was suddenly a widow, older seeming, sadder, rigidly in charge through all the funeral pomp. A grieving great lady now.
I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the hundreds of thousands of messages, nearly 800,000 in all, which my children and I have received over the past few weeks.
And then she left us, married a rich man from another country who could give her children something perhaps no American could, the gift of privacy, where they didn't have to be Kennedys and public all the time. After he died, she came home, a private person still. She had a job, lived quietly. We would see her at ceremonies, the dedication of a library, a welcome for Nelson Mandela. She was a Kennedy still, but had a life outside the family. The kids, Caroline and John, were grown now and successful. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis spoke up occasionally for good causes, like not putting too many skyscrapers in Manhattan.
I believe it's time to stop the overbuilding in New York City by drawing the line at Columbus Circle.
Camelot and tragedy, and at the end, a private person still. After going through a rather difficult time, she said, I consider myself comparatively sane. I am proud of that. She was, in a feminist age, a feminist lady. What she gave us was a touch, much more than a touch, of class. Bruce Morton, CNN, Washington.
President and Mrs. Clinton remember Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis today as a model of those qualities that make a public figure into a national saint. CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer joins us now with the details from Washington. Wolf?
Leon, President Clinton and First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton had developed a special bond with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and they said this morning they were deeply saddened by her death. They spoke in the First Lady's garden here at the White House earlier this morning.
Jackie Kennedy Onassis was a model of courage and dignity for all Americans and all the world. More than any other woman of her time, she captivated our nation and the world with her intelligence, her elegance, and her grace. Even in the face of impossible tragedy, she carried the grief of her family and our entire nation with a calm power that somehow reassured all the rest of us.
If she taught us anything, it was to know the meaning of responsibility to one's family and to one's community. Her great gift of grace and style and dignity and heroism is an example that will live through the ages.
White House officials say they're waiting for the Kennedy family to decide what the funeral arrangements should be. Whatever they are, the President and First Lady would almost certainly like to attend. Mr. Clinton's politics, by all accounts, were clearly shaped by the Kennedy legacy. The Kennedys have meant a lot to Bill Clinton, something Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis understood and welcomed. As a teenager, he came to the White House to meet President Kennedy in the Rose Garden, and he says he was deeply affected. Indeed, on the morning of his own inauguration, Mr. Clinton went first to Arlington National Cemetery to lay a wreath at the Kennedy gravesite. He was joined by Senator Edward Kennedy, the late president's youngest brother. Last October, Mr. Clinton was able to keep up the symbolic relationship, joining Mrs. Onassis and other family members at the dedication of a new wing of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library in Boston.
He inspired millions of us to take a very personal responsibility for moving our country forward and for advancing the cause of freedom throughout the world.
To many observers, the Clinton and Kennedy presidencies seem to have much in common, two young and energetic men trying to change the world. The two First Ladies also seem to have something in common, despite their different eras: youth, a country's fascination, and young children living in the White House under the constant glare of cameras.
I've also had wonderful conversations with Mrs. Onassis, Jackie Kennedy Onassis, whom I admire greatly and whom I've talked with about how she protected her children and what she did to give them a normal life.
Last summer, the Clinton-Kennedy connection was strengthened when the President and First Lady vacationed on Martha's Vineyard and were invited to go boating with Mrs. Onassis, her longtime companion Maurice Templesman, and their families. The president says he and Mrs. Clinton are grateful to Mrs. Onassis.
She's been quite wonderful to my wife and to my daughter and to all of us.
Like the president and first lady, many White House officials here were deeply influenced by the Kennedys, and there is sadness here at the White House today. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, reporting live from the White House.
Well, thank you. Ronald Reagan also remembers Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis as a woman of outstanding quality. In a statement, the former president said, and we're quoting, "Few women throughout history have touched the hearts and shared the dreams of Americans more profoundly than Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Nancy and I have always admired this remarkable woman, not only for her grace and dignity, but also for her tremendous courage. Nancy and I were honored to know her and send our deepest sympathy to the entire Kennedy family, especially John and Caroline." And a program reminder for you, CNN will present a special look back at the life of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. The half-hour program airs today at 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time.
And we are going to continue with our special look at Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis this morning. We're going to be joined in just a few minutes by the former chief of staff for her during her years in the White House.
Etiquette expert Letitia Baldridge shares her thoughts and memories of the former First Lady.
Tonight, somewhere amongst the important documents, the catch of the day, the tools, the toys, there is one package more priceless than all the rest. The golden package. It must be watched over, and come what may, it must complete its journey as promised. But which one is it? Ah, no one knows which one is the golden package, so every package will be treated as if it were.
For 116 years, we've been handling the business part of life so you could enjoy the living part. Household for the business of living. Watch your mail for a special no annual fee Visa offer.
Painted bright, blue sights, hoods up a fight, blue sights, stay so bright, beautiful sights, blue sights, pure delight, blue sights, dynamite, blue sights, scrubs up bright, excite, blue sights, weather tight, blue sights, feels so right, blue sights, black and white, color bright, hold on tight, blue sights, a lasting time, blue sights, or a finish that won't quit, blue sights, right.
Does Hitachi make camcorders,
Yes.
barcode readers,
Yes.
micromotors,
Yes.
PBX systems,
Yes.
clown noses,
No.
mass transit trains,
Yes.
semiconductors?
Yes.
Lots of products.
Lots.
Over 20,000. Yeah, but who's counting?
They're called Porsches of the Sea. Powerful, sleek, and built for speed. Will the bluefin survive, or will the government can the tuna industry? Hunt for the giant bluefin on World of Autobahn. 10 Eastern, Sunday night, only on TBS.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis helped create an air of style and elegance during her years in the White House, an era heralded as Camelot. As First Lady, she had the presidential mansion restored and redecorated. And after the assassination of President Kennedy, she personified the grief of a nation. Letitia Baldridge was at the First Lady's side during those years, serving as her chief of staff, and she joins us this morning from our Washington bureau to share some of her thoughts and memories. Good morning, Ms. Baldridge.
Morning,
it's nice to see you.
Morning.
As you look back on the years you spent with her, what do you think of when you think of her? So many adjectives have been used to describe her.
So many things, exactly. She was an outstanding person. But I remember the growth of her importance to the president and to the American nation happened during the state visits. The first one was to Canada. And the Canadians said to the Kennedys, look, we're not very demonstrative up here. You're not going to have a lot of cheering and clapping. We want you to know about that in advance so you won't be worried about your welcome. Well, the Kennedys arrived, and you heard in the streets, welcome, Jack, welcome, Mr. President, Jackie, and then the Jackie started. It became a cadence, a chant. In France, millions of French crowded the streets of Paris and shouting, Jackie, Jackie. And in Spain, and not in Spain, in Mexico, in South America, all the countries, she was the instant hit, and the president was so proud of her. And the heads of state were enchanted by her, and she spoke their languages, and she would always speak in the language of the country. She really did a fantastic job for us internationally. So she was much more than a wife, and a wonderful wife, and a mother, and a hostess, and an interior designer. She really influenced our politics internationally.
She just really had it, didn't she? Just a lot of charm and charisma.
She did, and from the time she was a little girl when I first knew her, she put on a sweater and a skirt, and she put them on in a certain way that nobody else could. She had a certain natural elegance that was absolutely indefinable, and everybody wanted to copy it, and nobody could. I used to sit there opening the mail that would come from fans wanting to put their hair up in rollers exactly like her, so they looked like her, wanting to know what she fed the babies and the children, because they wanted to feed their children the same food. There was a real kind of hero worship, and she did a fantastic job for us in the White House. There's just no question. She did a fantastic job.
Privacy was very important to her. How was that to be protected?
Well, in those days, pre-Watergate era, the President and the First Lady did enjoy a certain amount of privacy. A lot of what they did in their private lives, their parties and their comings and goings, was not reported to the press and not put on any schedule. Now, everything the President and First Lady does, including when they brush their teeth, is put on a schedule, and the whole world knows about it.
Was she like that? Did she have things scheduled in, or did she have free time put in?
But she kept a lot of time for the children. That was paramount in her life. But she still did her homework when there was a very important reception dinner coming on with top performing artists in the United States and with top visiting firemen from other countries as guests of honor. She did a lot of work. She briefed herself really perfectly so that she knew everything about the country and everything about the person's politics. We went through so much research before anybody came to visit this country that it was practically like learning the whole country from A to Z. She was that way. She was a perfectionist. And, you know, she was well organized. She was very hardworking, and people looked at her and they saw in her magnificent gowns and the fabulous hair and all the glamour. They didn't know how hard she worked.
And I think something else when you say that, too. I think people, when someone is in the public eye like that and so adored, they forget that these folks can be a regular person and need some regular time. Did she have people who she was really close to, who she could just chum around with?
She did. She would go riding in Virginia with some real pals. But most of the time that she had time off, so to speak, she spent with her children, engaged in their pursuits. And, you know, she had, I'll never forget John's first birthday party when she had about 10 of his little friends upstairs in the family quarters, and she brought in the birthday cake. That was the cutest birthday cake I ever saw. And John celebrated by, when all the candles were blown out, he simply put his entire face right smack into the frosting. And, you know, those are the things I'll remember about the White House. The family, the children leaving their tricycles behind great statues and satin damask draperies, and it's all those personal touches. She wanted the children there, but she did protect them from the public.
What was important to her these last years?
Well, I think she had a lot of things that were important. Her family, again, Caroline and John, and her grandchildren, and her friend Maurice Templesman, who was such a lovely man, and her sister Lee, and her right arm and aide, Nancy Tuckerman. She was surrounded by people who really loved her and cared about her.
Former Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Chief of Staff, Letitia Baldridge, thanks for sharing with us what you knew about her.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Leon?
Coming up on 20 minutes after the hour now, we will take a look at some of this morning's other top stories when the morning news continues. Stay with us.
So what comes to mind after a hard day's work? Nah, you just need to take it easy. You know, sit back, relax, and let a sumptuous new Oldsmobile 88 LSS luxury sedan work out all those nasty kinks and tensions. And in no time at all, you'll be set to go back to work and do it all over again. It's your money.
Hometown proud. It's more than just a feeling. For your locally owned IGA supermarket, it's a way of life. While the global buying power of 4,000 IGA stores means hometown savings, like rice checks, wheat checks, and corn check cereals, and the great taste of Velveeta cheese spread. Hometown savings. At IGA, it's one more reason we're hometown proud.
In today's world, managing air travel costs is more important than ever, which is why over 100,000 companies, including half of the Fortune 500, use the same payment system. One with customized billing and reports to help keep corporate travel expenses under control, and the only one that costs nothing to use.
The air travel card. Sounds smart. Let's go with it.
Call 800-222-4688. The air travel card, the smartest route.
She was a private woman in a public life. From a gracious first lady to an intriguing heiress, Americans have always been fascinated with Jackie Onassis. Join Larry Woods for a tribute to her life. Jackie, today, 11 Eastern on CNN.
Two minutes after the hour now, looking at some other stories making news this morning. Justice Department lawyers are undecided on whether a president can be sued for something alleged to have happened before he took office. However, an administration official says the department is preparing a court brief on this issue just in case it is needed. Immunity could become part of the strategy to defend President Clinton in a sexual harassment lawsuit filed by former Arkansas employee Paula Jones. Justice officials expect that the judge handling this suit will eventually seek the department's opinion on the issue.
U.S. officials say North Korea is one step closer to acquiring new supplies of plutonium for its suspected nuclear arms program. North Korea has removed fuel rods from a nuclear reactor used to generate power. U.S. officials got word of the action after inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency visited the reactor. Inspectors hope to win Korea's cooperation to verify plutonium in the fuel rods will not be extracted without IAEA observation. President Clinton says it would be an error for North Korea to continue to block inspections after they have agreed to comply with them.
Israel has slammed shut the border with the Gaza Strip. Palestinian gunmen killed 2 Israeli soldiers at a border station between Israel and Gaza. Islamic Jihad, a Muslim fundamentalist group, claimed responsibility for the attack. It came just 2 days after Israel pulled its last troops out of Arab population centers in the Gaza Strip. A witness said he heard 2 bursts of automatic weapons fire and the attacker's car sped into the Palestinian Autonomous Zone.
Coming up on CNN Morning News, a look at the weather as we head into the weekend.
And first, though, here's today's allergy report for you.
This is meteorologist Valerie Voss. We'll continue to see pollen levels in the low range across northern New England today. Moderate pollen counts will be reported in the rest of the northeastern United States, as well as across the Northwest, the Rockies, and the Four Corners region of the West. Expect high levels of pollen in California, Nevada, and northern Utah, as well as over a large area from the plains to the Great Lakes and all of the South. Grasses remain the major allergens in most areas. On Saturday, the allergy forecast shows some big changes, with low levels just over northern Maine. Moderate levels in northern New England, upstate New York, and the Northwest. The remainder of the U.S. will experience high pollen counts.
Allergy forecast is brought to you by Tylenol Allergy Sinus. Allergy relief clear to your sinuses.
Think a whole week at the lake?
And it's allergy season.
All that fishing.
All that ragweed.
Spring in the air.
Water in my eyes.
Awake with the sun.
Awake with sinus pain.
Need strong allergy relief that's better than the leading prescription? A new study shows it's Tylenol Allergy Sinus.
Hey, maybe we can stay an extra week.
Tylenol Allergy Sinus. Better relief than the leading prescription.
Today, the case of the cheapskate son.
I know this is hard, but please tell us about your son.
He's a good boy. It's just that every time he phones, he's in a hurry to hang up.
Worried about cost, is he?
I'm lucky if I get to hear 2 words about my grandkids.
So I'm thrifty. What's the crime in that?
You could have talked to your mother twice as long if you signed up for Sprint's new offer.
Order.
Being thrifty's not a crime, but missing an offer like this is.
okay?
It's fixed. You sure? Looks a little strange.
Oh, I've done this before. Watch.
Just when you really need it. It's Service Star's Good Neighbor Sale, going on now at a Service Star near you. Some of us need it bad. Real bad. Get a Rubbermaid Portable Work Center or Step Stool Toolbox, only $16.99 each, or a Sirocco High-Back Resin Chair, just $8.88 at Service Star.
As luxury cars get more features, they tend to get crammed with more wire, creating possible electrical problems. That's why Infiniti developed an advanced electrical system for the Q45. Like fiber optics, one wire can carry masses of information for greater reliability and more efficient controls. The choice in luxury cars is getting simpler.
It's about 26 minutes after the hour. Boy, hope you haven't put away your down comforter yet.
And a little natural air conditioning going on in the southeast. Valerie Voss here with the weather. Val?
Leon, Donna, yes, a bit on the cool side across much of the east this morning. Mansfield, Ohio, down to 40 degrees. Jackson, Kentucky, 45. Those are records. In Highlands, North Carolina, up in the mountains, it's 32 degrees this morning. And the forecast high temperature for Atlanta today is 72 degrees, which is below normal. Interesting situation that up across northern British Columbia, the Yukon Territory, and up into Alaska, there's a ridge of high pressure bringing warm weather into the area, and up around the Arctic Circle it was 72 degrees yesterday. They're going to be on the warm side again today. So it's warm up there and it's cool down here, and even cool in the desert southwest. Pretty warm though through the plain states, and with the conditions heating up and upslope winds, the east slopes of the Rockies, we could see some severe storms developing today. Some heavy rains have fallen across northwestern sections of North Dakota, and they do have an urban and small stream flood advisory in effect. There's the temperature map. Warm through the central U.S., cool northeast and northwest, and then warm again up across the far northwest. Won't see too many 90s through the desert southwest of the U.S., but plenty over Florida, and 80s into the Dakotas and Minnesota, some 70s into sections of southern Ontario. Still 60s with some 50s along the coast across the northeastern U.S. today. On the forecast weather map, things look pretty much the same today as they did yesterday, but things will clear out of New England as our area of low pressure pushes farther southward with rain showers the mid-Atlantic, thunderstorms Florida, thunderstorm the east slopes of the Rockies, and rain and still mountain snow showers over parts of the northwest. Here's your forecast now for some cities that we hope are close to you. Hope you have a good day. Whatever your weather, don't forget a sweater in some parts of the country. Morning News continues now with Donna Kelley and Leon Harris.
Thank you, Valerie. When we come back, we'll bring you the latest as the nation mourns Jackie.
We'll also bring you the latest from the stock market as trading is underway in just about a minute or so. Stay with us.
Financial concerns, medical problems, anxiety about the future, the loss of a loved one, the pressures we all face, the emotions we all experience. 50 million Americans, 1 out of every 5 of us, have found they can cope better, feel more secure, actually improve their lives by turning for help to one particular company. A company whose sole purpose has always been to provide its customers with products and services that bring them to a different state of mind. Peace of mind, security, protection, preparation, optimism, peace of mind. It comes with every piece of the rock.
Sunday, cocaine dealers who carry guns and badges. Crooked Cops, real-life crime stories. CNN presents Sunday.
Hey, Vern Doggy, are you ready to wipe out those high-energy bills? Well, all you got to do, Vern, is switch from all electric over to economical natural gas. There's probably a gas service line in your neighborhood, and you won't believe how easy it is to hook up. Gas is clean, efficient, and the big savings are like totally awesome and groovy to the max, okay? So switch to gas. It can't be beat. Gas, gas, gas.
For more information about gas service in your area, call Louisiana Gas Service.
You'll get laughs on HBO.
The polite laugh. The big burly Viking laugh.
You'll get knockout performances on Showtime. And you'll get to swing and shout with the Disney Channel. And when that next great event comes along, we've already saved you the best seat in the house. Your house. The premium channels on Cox Cable.
This is CNN.
Checking now our top story this morning. A private wake and funeral are planned today for Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
She died of cancer last evening at her New York City apartment. Her two children, John Jr. and Caroline, visited their mother in her final hours and were with her when she died. Mrs. Onassis returned home Wednesday when doctors told her they could do no more for her cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The former First Lady is perhaps best known for her dignity, her grace, and her courage in the face of a personal and national tragedy. President Clinton today said he and Mrs. Clinton valued the friendship of Mrs. Kennedy Onassis.
I can say that as much as anything else today, I am grateful for her incredible generosity to Hillary and to Chelsea. The way she shared her thoughts on everything from how to raise children in the White House to ideas about historic preservation to her favorite current books. We hope that Mrs. Onassis' children, John and Caroline, and her grandchildren find solace in the extraordinary contribution she made to our country. Our thoughts and prayers are with her children and grandchildren and her entire family as we grieve over the passing of a cherished friend.
CNN will air a half-hour special this morning, Jackie, beginning at 11 Eastern.
And we will continue our look back on the very special lady throughout our show this morning. But before that, though, we're going to check into the morning's financial news. Terry Keenan standing by the New York Stock Exchange. Terry?
Thanks, Leon and Donna. We begin today with a couple of labor disputes, one ending and one just beginning. In Illinois today, 7,000 members of the United Auto Workers are headed back to work. Their four-day strike against Caterpillar ended last night. That after the company agreed to reinstate 34 of 37 union members who had been suspended for refusing to take down balloons bearing pro-union slogans. And another dispute just beginning in Philadelphia this morning. 3,500 Conrail maintenance employees have gone on strike. They're protesting safety conditions. So far, the walkouts have taken place in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and in Philadelphia, but they could spread to tracks across the nation. Federal authorities recalling two types of child safety seats because they don't meet government standards on flammability. The recalls involve 164,000 Dream Ride seats made by Costco, Columbus, Indiana, and 5,000 Rentalux seats made by FBS of Greer, South Carolina. Well, checking the financial markets early in the day, the Treasury market off to a slow start. The 30-year bond is down 11/32 in price. That puts the yield at 7.27%. As for Wall Street, stocks are hoping to extend their six-day winning streak. Yesterday, the Dow closed with a gain of 26 points. Checking the blue chips in the very early going today, you see the number in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, down about 1 point. And that's the latest in business news. I'm Terry Keenan at the New York Stock Exchange. Now back to Donna and Leon.
All right, thank you very much, Terry. Liz Carpenter was press secretary to Lady Bird Johnson, the wife of Lyndon Johnson, who became president when John Kennedy was assassinated.
Carpenter was a guest on CNN's Newsnight, and she told about a letter that Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis wrote to Lyndon Johnson on the day after the assassination.
She wrote in her own handwriting a letter to Vice President Johnson, "Dear Mr. President," and it was a thank you for walking yesterday behind Jack. Would you like me to read the letter?
Sure, if you have it handy.
You did not have to do that. I'm sure many people forbid you to take such a risk, but you did it anyway. Thank you for your letters to my children. What those letters will mean to them later you can imagine. The touching thing is they've always loved you so much. They were most moved to have a letter from you now. And most of all, Mr. President, thank you for the way you've always treated me, the way you and Lady Bird have always been to us, before when Jack was alive and now as president. I think the relationship of the president and vice presidential families could be a rather strained one. From the history I've been reading ever since I came to the White House, I gather it often was in the past. But you were Jack's right arm, and I always thought the greatest act of a gentleman that I had seen on this earth was how you, the majority leader, when he came to the Senate, was just another little freshman who looked up to you and took orders from you, could then serve as vice president to a man who had served under you and been taught by you. But more than that, we were friends, all four of us. All you did for me as a friend and the happy times we had. I always thought, way before the nominations, that Lady Bird should be the First Lady, but I don't need to tell you here what I think of her qualities, her extraordinary grace of character, her willingness to assume every burden. She assumed so many for me, and I love her very much. And I love your two daughters, Linda Bird, because because I knew her the best. And we first met when neither of us could get a seat to hear President Eisenhower's State of the Union message, and someone found us a place on one of the steps in the aisle where we sat together. It was strange last night. I was wandering through this house. This is the night after the funeral. There in the treaty room is your chandelier, and I had framed the page we had all signed, you, Senator Dirksen, Mike Mansfield. Underneath, I had written, the day the vice president brought the East Room chandelier back from the Capitol. Then in the library, I showed Bobby the Lincoln record book you gave. You see all you gave, and now you are called on to give so much more. Your office, you are the first president to sit in it, as it looks today. Jack always wanted a red rug, and I had curtains designed for it that I thought were as dignified as they could be for a president's office. Late last night, a moving man asked me if I wanted Jack's ship pictures left on the wall for you. They were clearing the office to make room for you. I said no, because I remembered all the fun Jack had those first days hanging the pictures of things he liked, setting out his collection of whale's teeth. But of course, they were there only for you to ask for them if the walls looked too bare. I thought you would want to put things from Texas on it. I pictured some gleaming longhorns. I hope you put them somewhere. It cannot be very much help to you, your first day in office, to hear children out on the lawn at recess. It is one more example of your kindness that you let them stay. I promise they will be gone soon. Thank you, Mr. President. Respectfully, Jackie. It's absolutely unbelievable and remarkable to me that in the torture of that week of watching her husband be killed, of going through all of the ceremonials, that the next day she sat down and wrote that extremely gracious and tender letter to the new president.
That was Liz Carpenter, press secretary to Mrs. Lyndon Johnson.
We will continue to keep an eye on that story as it develops, of course, and tell you more this morning as we remember Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, as well as the other news this morning. So stay with us.
It was 1 a.m. I'm hurting, I can't sleep, and I'm worried about taking something. Is it okay? What am I going to feel like in the morning? Finally, I take Tylenol PM. It stops my pain, it helps me sleep, and next morning, I am up with the sun and I feel great. Poor old Ralph can't even keep up. And I'm thinking, it's going to be a beautiful day.
Rest easy. It's Tylenol PM.
Hometown proud. It's more than just a feeling. For your locally owned IGA supermarket, it's a way of life. While the global buying power of 4,000 IGA stores means hometown savings on delicious pound cake and other favorites from Sara Lee. And for the perfect picnic, the great taste of Miracle Whip. Hometown savings. At IGA, it's one more reason we're hometown proud.
The new Saab 900. It won Automobile Magazine's Design of the Year. Consumers Digest rated it a best buy. Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine called it the best new car in its class. But with a 50% stiffer body, the new 900 is designed to survive much more than the scrutiny of the press. Test drive the Saab 900, a new 900 Turbo Coupe.
At Pearl Vision, we carry all the top names in eyewear, so you'll always find the style that's right for you, no matter what your frame of mind. For the greatest names in eyewear, come to Pearl.
Hi. You know, this week, all Goodyear Eagles for performance cars and all Goodyear Wranglers for light trucks are on sale. Heck, I think this says it all. On sale Wranglers, Eagles, Goodyear, all on.
Mark McKay here now for a look at sports. You know something? NBA season, the regular season is all over with and everything. And what good does it do you to have the best record in the league? No. It does you no good. Ask both teams who did it in the East and the West.
You're exactly right. This is looking more and more like the college basketball year. A crazy season. In fact, ask any NBA observer and they'll likely tell you that the Indiana Pacers have established themselves as a dangerous playoff team now that they've secured a spot in the Eastern Conference Finals. After blowing past Orlando in the opening round with a sweep, the Pacers finished off the East's top seed Atlanta last night at Market Square Arena. IndyCar driver Rick Mears among the 16,000+ who watched Indiana run circles around the Hawks. They did it early, and they did it often. Reggie Miller with the long jumper puts Indiana ahead. The only bright spot on this night, Mookie Blaylock. He buries his third three-pointer of the first half, but the Pacers were in control. In fact, they closed the Knights in the third period behind the play of Rick Smits. And then good defense. Derek McKee with the strip and the long pass ahead to the playoff veteran, Byron Scott. He puts it away. Pacers win by 19. Strike up the band. Indiana moves on while the Hawks head home to mend their wounds.
I think you have to give Indiana credit. They played very well. They executed. They made the big shots. You know, it was a hell of a series for them.
I want New York. They're supposed to be the team that's supposed to win it all and come out the East. So you can't shortchange anyone. You got to take. You want to take on the champ. You know, you got to take on the heavyweight champ. You got to go right the room.
In the Western Conference, both semifinal series will go the distance. Phoenix staved off elimination by handling Houston at home. Denver stretched Utah to the limit with a 3-point win at McNichols Arena. When the Jazz and Nuggets tip off tomorrow afternoon at the Delta Center, Utah team owner Larry Miller won't be in his usual courtside seat for Game 7. Miller and the deputy commissioner of the NBA thought it'd be best that he stay away from the next 2 Jazz home games after the owner was involved in this sideline scuffle with a Denver Nuggets fan earlier in the week. Yesterday, Miller was remorseful when reflecting on his actions.
I feel badly that I have embarrassed the franchise, the city, the state, and my own family. I've embarrassed myself.
Mr. Miller could still receive a league-imposed penalty, and it's unclear whether charges will be brought in connection with a police investigation of assault complaints filed by the Nuggets fans involved. Denver authorities say they expect to complete their investigation sometime today, and I should say that Utah authorities expect to complete their investigation. Well, I have to ask you, can you believe that another Stanley Cup playoff game between New York and New Jersey needed double overtime to decide a winner? That's right. Rough stuff last night at the Meadowlands Arena. Late third period, tied at 2. New Jersey with a chance to win. But goalie Mike Richter comes up big on Stéphane Richer. The 2-all deadlock would stay intact through 1 overtime period. Here in the second OT, the Devils have another chance, but Richter comes up big again. He just set the stage for his teammates to score the game winner with about 6.5 left in the extra session, the second extra session. It's Stéphane Matteau with the go-ahead goal. 3-2 Rangers. They lead the series. They will continue it this weekend in Jersey. Baseball meets Marcel Latchman, the new manager of the California Angels. his team at home against Kansas City last night. Nice pickoff move. John Farrell kept intact a 3-all tie. The Royals' Kevin Apier, he had his trouble. Jim Edmonds lines one. Here comes one run. Angels would go up for good. But Farrell was the big story on the night. Brian McCary tries to bunt. Farrell shovels it to first just in time for the out, making Mr. Latchman a winner in his Angels debut. Here are the rest of the baseball numbers. Has sports during News Hour at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Donna, Leon.
Thank you, Mark. Coming up on CNN Morning News, more on the disease that claimed the life of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
We're going to be talking with a cancer specialist about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, learn some more about that disease and how to treat it. Just ahead, stay with us.
Hometown proud. It's more than just a feeling. For your locally owned IGA supermarket, it's a way of life. While the global buying power of 4,000 IGA stores means hometown savings, like the refreshing taste of new Minute Maid Naturals. And for the perfect picnic, there's nothing like Miracle Whip. Hometown savings. At IGA, it's one more reason we're hometown proud.
We care. That's the promise of Mohawk brand excellence. A dazzling array of carpet styles available exclusively at America's finest retailers, featuring DuPont Stainmaster with spill block.
Only the finest retailers have been chosen to be brand excellence dealers.
When Mohawk says our carpet's better, we put it in writing and we back it up.
And warranties you can trust. No fine print, no excuses.
Quality, value, performance. That's what you can expect from Mohawk.
Call now and receive a coupon for $1 per square yard rebate direct from Mohawk.
Can you tell which man is at home and which is in a Residence Inn hotel room?
Honey, can you take out the garbage?
That was a hint. Residence Inn by Marriott, the next best thing to home.
She was a private woman in a public life. From a gracious first lady to an intriguing heiress, Americans have always been fascinated with Jackie Onassis. Join Larry Woods for a tribute to her life. Jackie, today, 11 Eastern on CNN.
Minutes now before the top of the hour. The disease that killed Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis is called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's one of the nation's fastest growing terminal cancers, and though they have their suspicions, researchers say that its cause is still somewhat a mystery. Joining us this morning to help us gain a better understanding of this disease is oncologist Dr. Peter Wernick. He is also professor of medicine at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York and president of the American Radium Society, an association of doctors who use radiation therapy for cancer treatment. Good morning, doctor. Thank you very much for coming in.
Good morning.
Tell us something about this non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. How common a disease is that?
Well, it's a relatively common disease, especially in older people. It is a very treatable disease in general. And unfortunately, the term non-Hodgkin's lymphoma encompasses a number of illnesses that are quite different in their prognosis and in their treatment, ranging all the way from very treatable diseases to very untreatable diseases.
Really? Is that what complicates the matter of diagnosing it?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Is that what also complicates the diagnosing of it, since it seems to lump a number of different diseases into one category?
Yes, and early in the disease, the biopsy of a given lymph node may not be diagnostic. It may be rather nonspecific, and the lymph node may have to be rebiopsied and a determination made later that we're actually dealing with a malignant disease.
Mm-hmm. So what is the difference between Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? What is Hodgkin's lymphoma first?
Hodgkin's disease is a lymphoma that tends to occur in younger patients. It tends to occur localized, either to one side of the neck or under the arm. Only one lymph node bearing area involved usually at the time of presentation, whereas the non-Hodgkin's lymphomas tend to be more generalized and can sometimes even involve the bone marrow initially.
You know, in looking at the case of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, it seems as though we didn't hear any reports of her having any problems until sometime around February, and now we see what's happened with her. This seems to be a rather fast-moving disease. Is that how it normally plays itself out?
Well, I think she had one of the more unusual, very aggressive forms of the disease, and unfortunately it did not respond very well to treatment.
Well, how do you find out that you've got this if that is the case, and if you don't have that much time to work with?
Usually there's a painless swelling of a lymph node, as occurred in Mrs. Onassis' case. A biopsy is usually definitive in the very serious forms of lymphoma, and treatment can be instituted immediately, and that will give the patient the best chance of recovery.
Is it a very painful experience?
No. No.
Is this the kind of cancer that can be treated with some of these experimental therapies that we've been hearing about? In fact, this week there were reports about chronotherapy, using circadian rhythms of the body to help the cancer-fighting drugs that you're using. Is this the kind of disease that can be treated with that sort of disease technology?
Well, it is, but it's often not necessary to be that fancy. This disease usually responds very well to standard therapy initially, and in most cases, standard therapy is all that's required. Patients can be cured with just standard approaches. If standard approaches aren't helpful, there are many investigational procedures to be entertained, including bone marrow transplantation.
Tell us something about the different stages that you go through if you do have this disease.
Well, initially it's a very symptom-free type of disease with simply lymph node swellings that immediately respond to therapy, whether it be radiation therapy or chemotherapy. If the disease is not cured with initial therapy, it can present with organ involvement. The brain can be affected, which is a very rare phenomenon, but obviously occurred in Mrs. Onassis' case. Or the liver can be involved, and one can experience liver dysfunction, jaundice, that sort of thing. If the bone marrow becomes involved, the patient may become very susceptible to infections with unusual organisms. And these infections can be the major problem with the disease. Keeping the patient infection-free may be the biggest challenge for the physician.
Dr. Peter Wernick, thank you very much for coming in and talking with us about this disease. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Donna?
Coming up on Morning News, images of days gone by, but not forgotten. More memories of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
The First Lady is spending 2 weeks in India and Pakistan at the invitation.
To find out why people are buying the Mercury Villager instead of our minivan.
After you, sir.
We all can't fit in here.
Oh, no, you just slide the seat back. It's actually very complicated. Like a V6 leather CD player, if you like that sort of thing, which I...
How does it drive?
Great. I mean...
It also has standard four-wheel anti-lock brakes.
The Mercury Villager. All this and the quality of a Mercury.
Every day, thousands of people travel to New York on business. Business on the east side, the west side, business downtown. No matter where your business takes you, take yourself to a Marriott. The Marriott East Side, the Marriott Marquis, the Marriott Financial Center. 3 unique hotels that all share the same commitment to quality and service. We'll cater to all your business needs and all your personal needs as well. Rest assured, we make it happen for you.
Nobody else has it. Only Headline News Sports Ticker continuously updates scores in a flash, even while games are in progress. Headline News Sports Ticker, weekday evenings and all weekend long. From now on, you'll always know the score.
Hers was a very full life touched with both luxury and loss.
Let's look back a little bit at some memorable images of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
Shooting. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
The President of the United States is dead.
And coming up on CNN Morning News, we'll talk with former Washington Star photographer Arnie Sachs, a man who recalls Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis as a roving photographer who became First Lady.
And we're also going to be talking with Frances Batts-Layton, who co-authored and edited the book My Life with Jacqueline Kennedy. Just ahead, stay with us.
Passed over twice for the Supreme Court. Now Bruce Babbitt speaks out on Larry King Live Monday night, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Get an original from the original. Get a Mark III from Bone Ford. This loaded F-150 custom pickup is no sidewalk sissy at only $29.95. Its powerful 5-liter V8 comes with mag wheels, hardwood trim, leather interior, air, and much more. And get going in style with a Mark III conversion van for only $23,995 high top or $22,995 low top with V8, color TV, VCR, electric sofa, and more. At the original Bone Ford, your 15-minute dealer from Metairie, St. Bernard, and the West Bank.
Here's a handyman tip on cutting your utility bill in half, and you don't need a pair of scissors. Just get a new Carrier central air conditioner. Ask the handyman who owns one. Hey, this is the #1 AC in the South. Plus, right now, your Carrier Peace of Mind dealer is having a sale. No money down, 6 months, same as cash. Call your Carrier Peace of Mind dealer now.
In Greater New Orleans, call Richard Ripberger at Central Air Incorporated or Charles Gamble at General Heating and Air Conditioning.
Excuse me, I've been waiting for over half an hour for someone to help me. Excuse me. Sir?
I'll never forget that day. 1 minute, everything was fine. And the next minute, my daughter slipped and hit her head. I felt so helpless, so scared. But then the doctor took my hand and told me everything would be okay. At East Jefferson General Hospital, the doctors made the difference. They made sure I knew what was happening every step of the way. And my daughter, she got the best of care.
East Jefferson General Hospital. Higher standards. Outstanding doctors.
This is CNN.
Jackie Kennedy Onassis was a model of courage and dignity for all Americans and all the world.
President Clinton reflects on Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. A look at her life and death is coming up. And welcome to the second hour of CNN Morning News. I'm Donna Kelley.
And I'm Leon Harris.
Cancer has claimed the life of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Mrs. Kennedy Onassis died last evening at her New York City apartment, her family at her side. The 64-year-old former First Lady was an enduring symbol of elegance, grace, and courage. Joining us outside her apartment building is CNN's Charles Feldman. Charles?
Good morning, Donna. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was perhaps the closest thing this country ever had to royalty. Somebody who epitomized the words elegance and grace and restraint under pressure. Somebody who was able to persevere despite enormous personal tragedies, of course, including the assassination of her husband, John Kennedy. But she was not able to persevere over cancer, and it was cancer that claimed her life at about 10:15 last night at her New York apartment. This morning, in front of that apartment, there are a lot of reporters, a lot of press people to get the story out to the world about the passing of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, but also some passers-by, people in the area, some tourists from around the world, who told us how they remember Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
I didn't realize what an important person she was until now, and how many people really respected her, and you know, she's a really remarkable woman and a beautiful one too. And I'm just someone who lives in New York City and who jogs in the park, and it's amazing I just wanted to jog by here just to sort of get the feeling of it all. It's really sad.
Jacqueline Onassis was very popular also in Germany, all over Europe, because of the history and her marriage with Aristotle Onassis. So she was really very popular.
Well, she's a very strong woman, very private and very strong woman. So it's just I want to be a piece of it.
Some thoughts on Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. She was, of course, one of the most private public people this country and perhaps the world has ever known, somebody who valued her privacy. We have learned that, in keeping apparently with those wishes, the body has been prepared by funeral parlor personnel in the Fifth Avenue apartment in preparation for a private wake there, followed, we are told, by a private funeral. She, of course, was a very well photographed woman, and we're going to show you now what we believe to be are some of the last photographs taken of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, taken, in fact, only last weekend across the street from her apartment in New York's beautiful Central Park, taken by freelance photographer Bill DeVilla. Pictures of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis appearing even then, already weakened, but of course the world did not know what she and her close friends and family members then apparently did know, that she was gravely ill with a very, very short time left to go. Pictures of her with her daughter, with her grandson, and with her companion of recent years, Maurice Templeton. The last photos, or at least what we believe to be some of the last photos, of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Charles Feldman, CNN, reporting live from in front of the Fifth Avenue apartment house where Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis once lived.
All right, thanks, Charles. President and Mrs. Clinton said today Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis made an extraordinary contribution to the country. CNN senior White House correspondent Wolf Blitzer is standing by with the details in Washington. Wolf?
Leon, like so many people of their generation, President Clinton and First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton say they were deeply influenced by the Kennedys, and this morning both of them came out and told reporters that they were deeply saddened by Mrs. Onassis' death.
We hope that Mrs. Onassis' children, John and Caroline, and her grandchildren find solace in the extraordinary contribution she made to our country. Our thoughts and prayers are with her children and grandchildren and her entire family as we grieve over the passing of a cherished friend.
She was a great support to me personally. When I started talking with her in the summer of 1992 about the challenges and opportunities of being in this position and how she had managed so well to carve out the space and privacy that children need to grow into what they have a right to become. She will always be more than a great First Lady. She was a great woman and a great friend.
Will you be going?
White House officials say the President and First Lady are waiting for Mrs. Onassis' family to decide what the funeral arrangements are going to be. They expect the family will indeed want a private ceremony. Whatever the family does decide, Mr. and Mrs. Clinton are expected to attend. Over the past 2 years, they had developed a close relationship with Mrs. Onassis. Last summer, the President and First Lady were invited by Mrs. Onassis and her longtime companion, Maurice Templesman, to go boating while they were vacationing in Martha's Vineyard. Mrs. Clinton has said she had come to rely on Mrs. Onassis for advice, and they often spoke on the phone. In October of last year, the President was invited to attend the opening of a new wing of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library in Boston, and Mr. Clinton then spoke of the Kennedy legacy and his impact on him. Once again, officials here at the White House are waiting for word from the Kennedy family about the funeral arrangements, and they will cooperate with whatever the family wants. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, reporting live from the White House.
Thank you, Wolf. We are at about 6 minutes after the hour. Ronald Reagan also remembers Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis as a woman of grace and strength. In a statement, the former president said, and we're quoting, "Few women throughout history have touched the hearts and shared the dreams of Americans more profoundly than Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Nancy and I have always admired this remarkable woman, not only for her grace and dignity, but also for her tremendous courage. Nancy and I were honored to know her and send our deepest sympathy to the entire Kennedy family, especially John and Caroline." In a telephone interview, Nancy Reagan said Mrs. Kennedy Onassis provided comfort to her after the assassination attempt on President Reagan.
She was very kind to me at that time. When I didn't know whether my husband was going to live or not, she called and she wrote me a very kind, sensitive letter. And then when we left the hospital, she wrote me again when she saw the picture of us on television leaving and coming back to the White House. Again, she wrote me, and she was very, very kind, very thoughtful to me at that time, and I appreciated it very much.
Further words of tribute flow in from around the nation. Former President Bush, he has echoed what so many have already said. Quoting here, "Jackie Onassis brought great dignity and grace to the White House and was indeed a charming and wonderful First Lady." Lady Bird Johnson, widow of the president who took office after John F. Kennedy's death, issued this statement from Austin, Texas.
"In times of hope, she captured our hearts. In tragedy, her courage helped salve a nation's grief. She was an image of beauty and romance and leaves an empty place in the world as I have known it. We shared a unique time, and I always thought of her as my friend."
Later this morning, CNN's special tribute to Jackie Onassis comes your way, narrated by CNN's Larry Woods. The half-hour special comes at the top of the hour on CNN.
You know, friends say that Jackie Kennedy Onassis lived her life exactly as she wanted.
And we will take a brief look back at her life in the limelight when CNN Morning News continues.
Morning News is brought to you by your TCBY store, home of the country's best yogurt.
You know what I hate? 6 a.m. Never controlling the remote control. What? Miracle diets. What do I love? This stuff. Oh, yeah. Ooh, and this. And hey, I can even get it fat-free.
Fat-free? And right now, TCBY parfaits are on sale for only $1.59.
TCBY parfait is on sale? I really love that.
Hi, I'm Jim Palmer for The Money Store. Even if your credit is less than perfect, you can still refinance your first mortgage at today's low fixed rates. That's because The Money Store looks at your total credit picture and won't automatically disqualify you for late payments. At the money store, you can apply by phone, and there's no application fee. So if you want to refinance at today's low rates, even if your credit isn't perfect, call 1-800-LOAN-YES, the money store, where America goes for money.
Every Monday, there's a heat wave. Every Tuesday, it snows. And the rest of the week doesn't get any better. Testing the reliability of Trane air conditioners takes 16 miserable weeks. But when it's helping to make them some of the most durable air conditioners on Earth, you don't mind the sudden changes in weather. Designed, tested, and manufactured to last, it's hard to stop a Trane.
What's got into that cat?
Now, Friskies taste better than ever, and it's filled with energy-producing nutrients to bring out the Frisky in your cat.
What's got into that cat?
Hi, it's Larry King, David Copperfield, Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt, and Bill Cosby, just to name a few. That's the guest list for Larry King Live next week, 9 Eastern, only on CNN.
Apple pie, you know? I mean, she does. She just reminds you of the type of person that you're always going to remember, you know? I don't know if anybody really remembers her husband as much as they remember her, but I think she brought class to the United States.
I've always admired her for what she's done, and even when she lost her husband, I mean, she went on and she's been very successful, and I think we have a lot to thank her for.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis shunned the spotlight after she buried 2 husbands. She devoted herself to family and work.
CNN's Mark Leff now takes a look back at the Jackie O that we saw in public.
This was not the image Americans had of their first ladies midway through the 20th century. At 31, the woman born Jacqueline Bouvier was not the nation's youngest presidential wife ever, but after decades of looking to older couples for leadership, people liked the fresh new look of Jack and Jackie.
People realized that not only was she a beautiful and very handsome First Lady, but she was extremely bright, and amazingly enough, people reacted very much to that aristocratic air that she had, kind of an American royal figure, our Queen Elizabeth.
The young woman, dubbed 1947's Queen Debutante, had a privileged youth, good family, good schools, a good job as a journalist, and a good marriage in 1953 to the wealthy young senator from Massachusetts. 2 children followed, the first a girl, and after a sometimes lonely path to the pinnacle of U.S. politics, a boy born just after the 1960 election. Young children at the White House were a novelty, but Jackie Kennedy was more than a mother and hostess at the executive mansion.
Kennedy used her for multiple roles. He sent her to India in 1962, and she sent back detailed political reports, which Kennedy used in dealing with India-Pakistani political things. So she was really a much more of a political asset than people realized.
Millions of people waited with her for the birth of a 3rd child and mourned when the boy died just after birth. Millions more saw rifle bullets cut down her husband in Dallas 3 months later and mourned with her again. John Kennedy's funeral provided some of the most poignant images of the 1960s. Jackie retreated from public life to raise her children, and then 4 months after Bobby Kennedy was killed in California while making his bid for the presidency, she returned to the spotlight with marriage to a much older man, billionaire Greek shipowner Aristotle Onassis, who died 7 years later. Some former fans denounced her as a mercenary. A friend said she later told him that marrying Onassis had liberated her from the Kennedys, especially, she said, the Kennedy administration. But that part of her life, while frozen in time, would not go away as Jackie Onassis tried to live her own. When she chose to be seen in public, it usually had something to do with the Kennedy family, its triumphs, tragedies, and memories.
Walk softly now, and you're drawn to the soft notes of a piano and a brilliant gathering in the East Room, where a crowd surrounds a bright young president who is full of hope and laughter.
Jackie Onassis had a lifelong love of horses and letters. Eventually, she went to work as a book editor, helping sign reclusive Michael Jackson to an autobiography contract, while trying to guard her own privacy as well. Her public statements were few and non-political.
I believe it's time to stop the overbuilding in New York City. by drawing a line at Columbus Circle.
Norman Rockwell painted her portrait, with permission.
That's really nice.
Less famous photographers clamored to record her every public move. She got a court to order one especially persistent freelancer to keep at least 100 feet away. Got another to tell a clothing company to keep a look-alike out of its advertising, and refused a biographer's request for help in chronicling her life. That book became a television miniseries. The role of Jackie went to a young actress from Ireland.
In no way did they expect me to try and imitate or impersonate her. And so I think we went more to try and capture an essence or a flavor. I think more than anything, I see her as a marvelous survivor. And I think that there's something very inspirational in her story.
One thing she could not survive was cancer. The woman who, as First Lady, widow, wife, and mother, had in some ways inspired a generation, if not always representing it, developed lymphoma at age 64. A few years before her death, an acquaintance asked Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis about her life. Her only response, "It's been interesting."
Still to come, Jackie Kennedy Onassis and the White House years.
A news photographer's perspective, just ahead of the morning news. Stay with us.
For centuries, we've been rubbing stains out of clothes. Now it's easier. Introducing new spray and wash gel with a built-in brush. Finally, a stain remover with enzymes and this fabric-safe brush that loosens dirt between fibers while it rubs these powerful enzymes right into the heart of the stain, a stain that would typically ruin clothes. Whether I like it or not, the way my kids look says something about me. And I wanted to say something nice. New spray and wash gel gets out what America gets into.
I'm going to Hawaii. Why did I buy a bikini? Wonder what I'd look like sitting.
When you're trying for a certain look.
Putting on suntan lotion. What else? Walking.
Help get that look by including Kellogg's Special K. Great toasted taste, 110 calories, and fat-free.
Oh, bikini. Yeah, I'd say that rhymes with aloha.
Kellogg's Special K. Great taste never looks so good.
If you've got what it takes, you can make it to the top.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm an addict. Before school, after school, all I did was watch TV. I was a zombie. Then my mom got me the new Crayola Amazing Art Adventure on my computer. Now I'm going on these really neat adventures and making my own pictures with crayons and paint and even stickers that move.
The new Crayola software by Micrographics, because it's cool to be creative.
Now I've got my life back.
Sachs was a photographer for the Washington Star newspaper during the Kennedy years in the White House. He photographed Jack and Jackie and their children on both formal and informal occasions during those 1,000 days of Camelot. And he joins us now from Washington to share some of his memories of Jackie. Good morning, Mr. Sachs.
Good morning, Donna.
You know, it's my understanding that she was a photographer herself. Were you able to know her during that time?
Yes, the first time I met Jackie was riding down the back elevator at the old Times Herald building on 8th Street. We used to use the back elevator because it was convenient, and our office was on the 6th floor, and the Times Herald photo office was on the 5th. Back then, when I was with International News. And the elevator operator, lovely, vivacious lady named Gussie, was sort of the interlocutor at everyone who rode the elevator, and she introduced me to Jackie as the new replacement for Lou Hollis, who was then the inquiring photographer for the Times Herald.
I hear she had a lot of energy and enthusiasm.
Oh,
what did you think?
She was very vivacious and very pleasant, and we used to give her tips on how to operate the equipment. and she was very enthusiastic, carrying a bag full of holders.
Mm-hmm. How was she as a photographer then?
Well, for what she was doing, she was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. What kind of things did she want to do with that career till she got sidetracked? I understand that she actually met President Kennedy when she was going to do an interview with him.
Yes, that's my understanding also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For what she was doing, I don't know whether she had other aspirations, because I was drafted into the service right after that. It was during the Korean War, so it was hard for me to have much contact by the time I was separated from the service. Mm-hmm. She was already married to Senator Kennedy at that time.
Mm-hmm. And you were able to photograph them in formal and informal settings. Give us an idea of how you set them up, how receptive they were, and how you went about your job.
Well, back in those days, it was much easier to cover the White House than it is today. There were fewer of us working, and the photo ops were for a limited number of people. You could talk to the president, you could talk to the first lady, you could ask them to do certain things or to act out what they were trying to do at that photo op. And it was a much more laid-back, much more relaxed atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. We want to take a look at some of the pictures that you took, and maybe if you would explain them to us as we go through.
Yeah. This was a picture I made of Jackie at Union Station. They were awaiting the arrival of King Hassan of Morocco, and Mrs. Kennedy just happened to lean out to see if the train was coming down the track, and I just froze that moment. I liked the picture so much, I sent her a print, and she immediately asked if she could borrow the negative to make it her official picture. Mm-hmm. I understand this was the president's favorite picture of her, and was appropriately framed and seated on his desk in the Oval Office. Mm-hmm. This was a photo of Jackie leaving the White House as they were moving the president's body to the Capitol, where it was going to lay in state. We made this picture, I made this picture, and then promptly ran over to the Treasury stand to get the picture of the catafalque going up Pennsylvania Avenue. And it was at that moment we got the word that Oswald had been shot by Jack Ruby. This is the arrival of the body at Andrews Field on the day of the assassination. Mrs. Kennedy is preparing to ride in the hearse to Bethesda Naval Hospital. It was a very sad time, particularly for me at that point, because I had tripped over a light stand and broke my big toe. I was trying to stay on one foot and make the pictures at the same time.
Oh, my.
This was at a happier time at the National Gallery of Art during the opening of the Mona Lisa exhibit, as Mrs. Kennedy with French Cultural Minister Malraux. It was a marvelous gala night. Everyone had a great time. This is Mrs. Kennedy with Madame Harvey Alphonse, who was the wife of the French ambassador and quite a prominent hostess in the capital at that time. This was the christening of the aircraft carrier JFK at Newport News. Carolyn swung the champagne bottle. As you can see, she did a great job. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Kennedy was